Hello, hello. Welcome to the product stage. My name is Kayla Schneider, and I get to lead our enablement and solutions teams here at Virtuous. We are here at using Virtuous to find your Goldilocks zone. It's kind of weird, like, what is a Goldilocks zone? If you just listened to Nick Pranger talk previously, you'll know what that is. It's really about how do we make sure that we're asking our donors for the right amount? What does that look like? And how can we do that in Virtuous? And so I am joined by the lovely Cath today. She's going to be walking us through the session. Cath, do you want to give a little intro?
Yeah, thanks, Kayla. Hi, everyone. I'm Cath. I'm a solutions engineer here at Virtuous. So I'm excited to be walking you through that presentation that Kayla just mentioned. So we will really be focusing in on how we can actually utilize Virtuous's baked-in insights, our integration with platforms like Donor Search and automation to really help your team to suggest those right asks for every donor. So I'm based out of San Diego. I'm on Kayla's team and excited to be leading the session today.
Yeah, thanks, Cath. I'm really excited to do this. When I think my background is in database administration and did a lot of prospect research and stuff and working with our team on that side. And so, man, it was time consuming. So how can we make it easier for your team to get that? I would love to have interaction in the chat. So please feel free to put where you're calling from, what it looks like for you all currently to do. How do you get your gift asks and like amounts and ask arrays for your donors? What are you doing to be able to do that? And then also, if you have any questions throughout the chat, the time, I'm going to be watching the chat, answering those. And then if we want to talk about them, kind of bring them up to Cath as well. So without further ado, let's dive in. Let's do it.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Kayla. And as Kayla mentioned, please feel free to just put your questions in the chat. She'll try to stop me whenever we have different ones that are relevant to where we're at in the demonstration, but I'm excited to jump into things. So as Kayla mentioned, this is going to be kind of building off of that session that you might have just walked through with Nick. So really putting into action now, how can we take that information from Virtuous and suggest those right ask amounts? What I do want to start out with is a quick overview of responsive fundraising before we jump into the Virtuous product. I know a lot of you might be current partners. Some of you, this might be your first introduction to Virtuous. Either way, just doing kind of a quick overview of the ideology that Virtuous is really founded upon. So this goes back to that idea that a lot of us, the way that we've been fundraising or that we have fundraised in the past, there are a lot of outdated strategies. So a lot of times we're looking at more of that one size fits all approach. But in today's society, our consumers and our donors, supporters, they expect this really hyper personalized journey. So if you think about your experience on Netflix or Spotify, every single day, you're getting that caterized experience. So really looking at your past interactions and having suggestions for what you want to watch or what you want to listen to. We also want to take that and apply it to fundraising. So here at Virtuous, our goal is really to help nonprofits to grow your fundraising through that responsive fundraising approach. So making sure that we're using strategies and technology to personally connect with every single supporter. So we kind of have an outline here, a 4-stage continuous cycle. We always want to make sure that we're really listening into our supporters. So listening for those key signals, really understanding why did someone come to give to your organization in the first place? Do they have a personal connection to your mission? Making sure that we're really listening and understanding who that individual is, and then using what we've learned by listening to connect with our supporters. So making sure that we're not just connecting with everyone in that one size fits all approach, but having those personal connections and also using automation to streamline some of those efforts. From here, what we're really going to be focusing on today in this session is suggest. So how do we make sure that we are suggesting the right next step with every single person that we work with? What I also want to call out here is that we recognize that this doesn't always mean that you're suggesting a donation. There might be a suggestion for someone to come to an event or become a volunteer. So we'll really go through that today in our session of how we are making that right suggestion. And then last but not least, we always want to make sure that this is a constant learning journey. So we don't want to just come up with a new strategy and set it and forget it. Let's learn from what is and what is not working. So being able to test and validate information, also having that data to drive your decisions. So using this to really become more responsive fundraisers. And then a really quick overview of who is Virtuous, what do we do in this market? So we solely work with nonprofit organizations, and we are a responsive fundraising platform. As you can see on this slide here, our platform is very robust. There's a lot that we can offer. So we are a nonprofit CRM. We have marketing integrated within our platform. We also have giving pages. So a lot to go through here. I'm not going to walk through all of this in this session. But if you're interested in learning more about Virtuous as a whole, we do have some different overview demos that are going on throughout RNS. But without further ado, let's jump into our product and start to walk through how we build out that Goldilocks zone and use those insights to really make sure that we're suggesting that right ask for every person. So what I want to start out with is a few ways within Virtuous that we build out these recommendations and suggestions out of the box. So first and foremost, what I'm on here is my dashboard. This is essentially my homepage. So when I log into Virtuous, first thing that I'm going to see for my day, and the section that I really want to focus in on is our relationship building recommendations. So exactly what we're focusing on, that Goldilocks zone. Here, what we have is actually a consolidated list of what we refer to as our best calls to make today. So what we're doing here, we're giving you that consolidated list of if you have an extra 10, 15 minutes in your day. I know that every development and fundraiser is very busy. So 10 to 15 minutes, you might not have that. But if you do, here are some people that you can really contact that are going to help you to move that needle today. So as you can see here, we have some different colors and different tags that are identifying the type of recommendation that we're suggesting. I'm going to walk through each of these, but we have financial suggestions, social, and then also suggestions based off of retention data. So first, let's go through that financial suggestion. What we're doing here is we are actually calculating a score for each of your supporters within Virtuous. So this financial score, we are looking at 3 pieces of information. We're looking at the recency, the frequency, and the monetary donations that Ross has made to your nonprofit organization. So we're taking all of that past giving information, we're running an algorithm in the background, and then assigning Ross a financial score of 1 to 99. So what we're doing here is we're really helping you to identify those individuals that are primed and ready for another financial ask. So with that information, I'm noticing, okay, Ross, he's probably ready for another ask. Then I'm going to even take that past giving information, so looking at his past gifts and his average gift size. And then we also have a native integration built with donor search. So combining that past giving information and then that capacity information from donor search, we're even giving you that suggested ask amount. So now you can come in here, you know that you have a donor that you can reach out to and prospect. And I have a suggestion for the type of donation that I might be reaching out for. So out of the box, you have some of those great insights. We also have social suggestions here. So coming back to that idea that we don't always want to be asking for a donation, there are a number of other ways that individuals can provide value to your nonprofit. Maybe you have a lot of volunteers or you have a really great social media presence. There are other ways that you can really help your supporters to feel more involved with your organization. So with these social scores, what we're doing is we are running another algorithm in the background for you. We're looking at 3 main pieces of data here. So first, we're looking at what we call social insights. That's going to be when we take this email address. So I'm taking Suzanne's email address, scraping the web for any publicly available data. So think things like LinkedIn connections or Twitter followers. I'm pulling that information. I'm also going to combine it with the relationships that Suzanne and Jim have within Virtuous. So understanding their connectedness to your other supporters. And then third piece of data that we're pulling in is the density of the donor population in their area. So do you have a lot of other donors that are located in Illinois? With that, we're pulling those 3 pieces of information and calculating the score of 1 to 99. So this is bubbling up those potential social ambassadors. Maybe instead of reaching out to Suzanne and Jim for a gift because they just gave a gift at the beginning of April, I'm going to ask them to promote an upcoming event on social media. or I'm asking them to volunteer at our event on Saturday, or to just come to the event in general. So really making sure that you are not always just asking for a gift, but presenting those other suggestions for how people can provide value for your organization. And then last but not least, we also have retention data being bubbled up in this section here. So if we recognize that someone in your system has lapsed, so they haven't given a gift in over 12 months, or in this case, maybe they have a recurring gift that is past due, making sure that we bubble that up so that you can re-engage them and suggest what that next step should be. Also, though, taking this a step further, if someone hasn't given in 6 to 12 months, we're also bubbling up those pre-lapse donors. And then you have these key details here. So understanding their recent gifts, being able to reach back out to them and get them back involved with your organization. So a lot of great ways here. You can see this list is pretty robust. And I will mention that if you have a strategy of doing like portfolios, so maybe you have major gift officers, or you're in charge of meeting with specific supporters, I can filter this list down by portfolio. So I can really take action first thing in my day or whenever I have some extra time, really reaching out on these recommendations. Okay. Another way that we really offer those suggestions out of the box is on our donation forms. So I have an example pulled up here of one of our donation forms that is built out with Raise Donors, our fundraising platform. And just to mention, you can have either standalone forms or embedded forms here. So just to show you, this form is very built out, but what I want to focus in on is how we are suggesting that right ask amount for everyone that might be landing on your donation pages. So whether that's people that this is their first time coming onto your website and they land on your donation button, or maybe it's from an outbound approach where we're sending out a URL to a specific campaign. Either way, we really want to make sure that we're always capturing that right ask amount for every person. So what we have within Virtuous is actually a small piece of code that you can embed on your website. And with this small piece of code, we call it the responsive listener. This is actually allowing us to track who's on your website, what they're looking at, and how long they're looking at it for. But more importantly here, it's actually creating a connection between your donation page and that person's contact record within Virtuous. So if this person has donated in the past or converted on a past form, we are able to actually pull in their giving history to make sure that this donation form is updating in real time. So what we call smart ask arrays, these are really great at making sure we're capturing that full value. So if I land on your page and I've never made a donation in the past, it might make sense to start out this ask array at $10 or $25. Great, that's making it very approachable for me as a new donor. But maybe Kayla is donating $500 every time. Let's instead make sure that this ask array is starting out at $500 and then moving up from there. So really encouraging Kayla to give at or beyond her current capacity. So what we want to prevent from happening is maybe if this form for everyone started out at $10 and Kayla landed on here, instead of entering in $500, she might just click $50 because that's the highest option offered. And then you might potentially miss out on $450 there. Or on the flip side, if I'm planning to give $10 to $25, but this ask array started out at $500 for everyone, I might feel like my $10 donation isn't really going to have an impact and I abandoned cart. And now you've lost out on that $10 donation, but more importantly, the opportunity to really steward that relationship with a brand new person. So these ask arrays really beneficial in helping you to meet your donors where they're at. And when these are enabled, we see about a 30% lift in average gift size. Another thing to call out on these forms that I think is really helpful at giving you that right suggestion is the ability to add in a recurring gift prompt. So I've selected a one-time gift. What I can do is have this optional offer to say, okay, are you sure that you don't want to give on a monthly basis instead? So if you're really planning on rolling out that recurring giving campaign, having that additional nudge to encourage people to be more involved with your organization. But let's say I want to keep it as a one-time gift. The last thing that I want to mention on our donation pages is that when you're suggesting that right ask amount, we also want to make sure that we're following that up by making giving and taking action easy. So what I want to call out here is that we have the ability for you to offer your donors many different ways to check out. So you can do credit card, ACH bank transfer, also Google Pay, Apple Pay, Venmo, and PayPal. So making sure that not only are you giving them that right suggestion amount, once they've decided to donate, is it easy for them to complete that transaction? I know personally, sometimes if I'm on a donation page or even online shopping, if I have to pull out my credit card or find my wallet, then I might abandon cart. So let's make sure that we're not losing any potential donors because of that friction. We're really making this accessible to everyone that's within your network. Okay, so a few ways that right out of the gates within Virtuous, we are really providing those suggestions. Now I'm going to jump into some other ways that we are storing some really important data that you can use to now craft your own Goldilocks zone. So I'm going to jump into the contact record, and Kayla, if there's any really important questions in the chat, please feel free to jump in and interrupt me. But if not, we're going to keep going. So I'm going to jump into this contact record now, and to give you a little bit of context into our contact records, what I want to call out is that we use a natural state of householding. So what that means is that we are always going to have an overarching contact record that can either be a household, an organization, or a foundation. So as you can see here, Ray and Mandy together, they're a household, but I also am tracking information on Ray and Mandy as the individuals that they are. So I just want to mention this because it's important to understand kind of how we're tracking this sort of data. We're tracking it on that consolidated level. So being able to bubble up all of that key information on Ray and Mandy together, but you're not losing any of that personalization. So I can still see what events and volunteer opportunities Ray and Mandy have come to. I'm tracking details on how they're involved in our organization, but having that flexibility to view it in both manners. What I want to call out mainly about our contact records, though, is those baked in donor insights that Virtuous has, and then that integrated wealth data with donor search. So let's jump into that integrated wealth data with donor search first. As you can see on the left-hand side here, I have that information readily accessible directly from a contact record. So this is a full native integration. What that means is that I can come directly into this contact record, and right from here, I'm hitting that refresh button, and I am pulling in that updated donor search information. So I don't have to build out my list and then export it, run a screening, and then re-import this data to my system. I can actually do that directly from a contact record. And as you can see here, a number of really important data points are being pulled in. So I can see that donor rating that donor search is assigning, letting me know whether this is someone that is a top tier donor right now that we can reach out to and potentially prospect for a gift. I can also pull in information about their capacity range. Maybe I want to understand their involvement with other nonprofits. So are they a foundation board member? I have other great details as well. So understanding not only their giving to our organization, but what is their total charitable giving as a whole? Or maybe their political giving if your organization is focused on political giving. We even have great details being pulled in, like their real estate value and their stock value. So some key information on this left-hand side. But what I love about this is that I can even click in and see a more expansive view of that wealth information. So I'll scroll down first, and then we can dive into a few of these different fields. So up top, you can see that we have those donor ratings. So I have that donor rating score again, but something else that might be helpful is maybe pulling in this annual fund likelihood. So let's say that you're planning out your end of year mailers. And as many of you know, sending out that direct mail can be a very costly solution. So maybe you have a list of 300,000 people, but we don't want to send a direct mailer to every single person. Maybe you're using this annual fund likelihood score to narrow down that list. So maybe the top 5,000 individuals that have a likelihood to give towards this, they get direct mailers, and then everyone else gets an email. So helping you to really build out that different segmentation and those different ways that you can suggest them getting involved. Same thing with major gift likelihood. Maybe if you have portfolios of donors and your major gift officers only have the bandwidth to work with a certain set of major donors, maybe it's 100 right now, you can use this major gift likelihood to pare down that list and kind of rank out the potential major donors. Some other information that might be really key is that donor wealth section. So having that estimated capacity range, being able to maybe understand, do they live in a community that happens to be more affluent? And that might be a signal that I'm listening to that's identifying a potential major donor. But I also love this section here of sector giving, because this is allowing me to really understand not only their involvement with our organization, but how are they supporting other nonprofits? So maybe this is a brand new person to your organization. They've been a volunteer, but they haven't made any sort of financial donations yet. I can come in here and understand, okay, if I'm a university, do they have an affinity to give towards higher education organizations? Or if I'm a hospital, do they have an affinity to give towards healthcare organizations? So all of these different data points, because it's a native integration, these are acting just like native fields in Virtuous. I can filter on any of these. I can build out a query. So I can use this information to really craft that Goldilocks zone. Okay, so a lot of information there. In a moment, I'll show you how we will actually build out those queries. But while we're on the contact record, just a few other things that I want to highlight. So we have that integrated wealth data, some other insights that we're pulling in for you. I mentioned quickly on our donation form that we have the ability for you to add in a small piece of code to your website. So this web history tracking is going to use that same piece of code. So you're getting to choose what pages you add this to. And then that's actually allowing you to see who's on your website, what they're looking at, and how long they're actually looking at it for. So if I click into one of these sessions, for instance, you can see here, I'm seeing the actual timestamps of what pages they're viewing. How is this helpful? This might be helpful in suggesting that right action as you're engaging directly with Ray and Mandy, these sample donors here. So maybe they're reading up specifically on one campaign or one fund that you're fundraising for. So maybe it's a project to build out, a new playground for a school or a new wing of a hospital. They haven't actually made a donation yet, but it seems like they're really interested in supporting this initiative. So maybe that's something when you meet with Ray and Mandy next, you're bringing up kind of your plans for that project and really being able to listen into what they're not saying to you, but use that information to further drive your engagement. Some other ways that we pull in those different donor insights, we also have social insights. So this was one of those 3 pieces of data that gets pulled into your social score. But what I'm doing here is all I have to do is click on their email address. And then through our integration with Full Contact, we are actually scraping the web for any publicly available details. So you can see here, I'm easily pulling in information on what organizations they might be affiliated with. I can also directly jump to their LinkedIn or their Twitter accounts. So being able to use this information to understand Ray and Mandy as the individuals that they are. For instance, maybe you were planning to reach out to Ray and Mandy directly for a gift, but from the information that I gather from social insights, either under organizations or from LinkedIn, maybe I'm noticing that Ray works for Microsoft or another large company, and we're actually looking for sponsors for our upcoming event. Instead, maybe the suggestion that you make right now to Ray is asking for an introduction to someone at Microsoft. So being able to really understand that connectedness of your community so that you're looking at all of the details, seeing holistically how you can make that right suggestion. Okay, but let's get back now to kind of building out that Goldilocks zone for your organization. As we went through, we have a lot of great data points that I can build different queries off of. We have those financial scores, our social scores. We have a lot of great information from donor search as well. So it might be pulling information on the donor rating or their estimated capacity range. Maybe we're also just looking at that past giving history like Nick had talked about in our previous session. Either way, let's look at some examples of how you can put this data into action. So Virtuous does have a lot of baked in reports. We have a ton of great visuals that you can use to really get started. But when it comes to building out those custom queries, I want to walk you through what this builder looks like. So first off, let's do a little bit of a high-level overview of our query builder. When I come in here, you can see that I have all different types of data that I can build a query off of. So I have contact information. I could build a query off of giving details. I could also get more specific to say I want to look at a project. Maybe I'm pulling information about who's opened our emails, all different types of data that you can really build these queries off of. To walk through kind of what our builder looks like, I have a quick example pulled up here. We're just starting from scratch. So we're always going to have that field, an operator, and a value. So 3 pieces of information that are determining how you're building out this query or this list. So right now I'm querying on contact information. I can easily come into my fields here and I have a whole list of fields that I can pull from. What's nice about this is it's always a search ahead. So I can say, okay, I want to pull gift information, or I want to see the fields that have to do with giving. So it's giving me those different options of what I want to build this query on. So let's say I just want to build this out for all of our contacts with life to date. I'm choosing that operator. So let's say I want to see all of the people with their life to date giving amount above $10,000. Great. I've built out now that criteria. I can continue to add on to this. So I can use an and statement or an or statement to build out that separate block. And then I can view the results directly from here. So now I have a couple examples that I've built out. So I have some queries and then an actual automation. So let's walk through some of those different examples. So what I'm doing here is I'm trying to build out a few different segments for prospects. Maybe I have donors that I want to prospect where I believe that their capacity is above $10,000. And then maybe I have a separate segment of donors where we're going to reach out to them for a gift between $1,000 and $10,000. This is going to look different for every organization. Maybe for you, a major gift is $1,000. For another person, it might be $100,000. So you're getting to choose a criteria here and really craft that Goldilocks zone for your organization. But here I have some examples of different types of data points that you can use and those different data insights. So right now I'm pulling off of that Virtuous financial score. I'm identifying those key people that we believe are ready and primed for a financial ask. I'm also saying, okay, I don't want them to have given a gift yet this year. And maybe these are people that in the past, they've already given a gift above $10,000. But I also want to add in some or criteria. So I'm saying anyone that fits this criteria, or they are someone that from that donor search information, they have an estimated capacity range above $10,000. Same thing, they haven't given a gift yet this year. And then I'm pulling in that highest rating from donor search. So identifying those top tier individuals that we think can give above $10,000. So I had this great query built out. I can either view the results directly from here. And with this builder, you have a ton of different options for action. So I can come directly in here. Maybe you want to add a tag to these people. Maybe you want to invite them to an event. Or what we're going to do here is actually build out some automations. So a couple other queries I have. This is just an example of having that separate segment of 1 to 10K. So the same kind of builder, just with some different numerical information. And then last but not least, maybe we're also recognizing that, okay, we want to make sure that we're suggesting that right amount for everyone. And we also want to make sure that we're capturing potential social ambassadors. So we're also pulling in here people that maybe are not primed and ready for a financial ask, but they might be ready for a social ask. So now let's jump into an automation and see how you can start to let Virtuous really do some of this work for you. So this is our automated workflow. This workflow has 3 different steps that are running. And as you can see here, they are being powered by those different queries that we just built out. And then what this is allowing me to do is build out different pathways for each of these different segments. So maybe over here on the right-hand side, I have those highest level donors. So donors that we're going to prospect for a gift over $10,000. And with this, maybe we want it to be a very high engagement type of interaction. So for our major donors, we don't really want to send out those automated emails. We want to really have eyes on all of this. So what I'm doing here is I'm adding a tag to those contact records. so that anyone that is engaging with those contacts immediately on their record, they'll be able to see, okay, this is a prospective donor above $10,000. I can also automatically assign this to a portfolio. So maybe I'm assigning this to David because he's our Chief Development Officer, and David's in charge of working with all of those higher level donors. I could even have David follow those contacts within Virtuous. So on that main dashboard, he's actually going to get updates on these individuals of what emails they're clicking on, if they're giving other gifts, if they're coming to events. So really having a pulse on their full involvement with your nonprofit. And then next, maybe for this specific example of those higher level donors, we want David to reach out personally to this individual and try to set up an in-person meeting. And we can even kick off that postcard so we can actually send them something in the mail that within 3 days that should arrive at their doorstep. So having that really personal setup for those higher level donors. And then we're getting into maybe that next segment. So donors that they're still kind of that mid-tier, depending on your organization, donors maybe that we're prospecting for $1,000 to $10,000. So I can set up some different messaging here. I'm building out those emails ahead of time. So you're determining kind of that journey that you want to take your supporters on. Maybe here, that's still a larger gift. So we don't want to immediately be reaching out and asking them for a donation. Maybe we're building out kind of that relationship again. So maybe this first email, it's including some stories about our recent impact in the community, really making them feel more bought back into our mission. I can send them emails, I can send them an SMS template, and then maybe a few days later, I'm actually getting that notification to give this donor a call. So all of this can really be crafted based on the message that you're trying to relay to this specific set of supporters. And another thing to call out too is that with this, you could even have links out to your donation page. So you can include those smart ask arrays when they click onto your donation page. So really having that ability to suggest that right ask amount. And then last but not least, we want to make sure that we're still engaging those individuals that could be involved in a number of different ways. So here we're identifying those potential social ambassadors. And maybe in this pathway, we don't want to spend a lot of manual time and effort engaging, but we have those automated emails and text messages going out. So potentially bringing in those individuals that want to be more involved, but not requiring a lot of staff time to focus in on this. So really having that ability to craft your message, you're building out that criteria. You have a number of different types of fields that I can query on. And then these pathways, as you can see, this one's a lot longer than my 10,000 and above. You get to craft really what you want that journey to look like. Okay, so I know we have about 10 minutes left. We've gone through a lot of information. So out of the box, what are ways that we are giving you those suggestions? We have that recommendation section here, as well as those smart ask arrays. We went through some of the different data points that we're collecting and how you can actually build out those different queries and then design an automation. So a lot of ways that you can use this information. What I want to jump into briefly is now, okay, let's say that you started to roll this out and we want to get an understanding of, is it working? Are our gift asks, or our average gift, is it increasing? So really reporting is a big thing that comes into play here of understanding, okay, how can we learn from this and continue to make those different adjustments? So I promise to leave a few minutes for Q&A at the end as well, but I'll spend about 5 minutes or so on Virtuous BI. So Virtuous BI is our new product that we released in March, and this is an enterprise-grade reporting product. Our goal with this is really to give nonprofits access to your information and the ability to really analyze that information. So with this, really allowing you to have easy access to information, an intuitive approach to really analyze that, and then also a clear and actionable path to acting on this data. So here you can see that we have dashboards that come out of the box. I also have a few that I've created myself, but there are 11 best practice dashboards that come with Virtuous BI. So as soon as you get in here, you can jump into these reports and start taking action. And these are going to include hundreds of different metrics. I'm just going to walk through a few right now that I think are relevant to this conversation today. So let's jump into that donor retention overview first. And as you can see here, we have a lot of different metrics that are being presented. These are all visual reports. So I can come in here, I can understand my retention data as a whole. The main ones that I wanted to highlight here are our LiveBunt and SciBunt reports. So being able to jump in here and get that quick list of individuals that are kind of that low-hanging fruit for our organization. I can come in here, I could drill down specifically on my portfolio or maybe a specific tag. So maybe I want to see all of the major donors that have potentially lapsed. I'm getting some of those high-level metrics here. So understanding data points like their average last gift size, the average months, or I can actually come in here and see by individual some important information. So if I'm, for instance, going to reach out to Kevin today because I know that he's a lapsed donor, I'm able to come in here and look at key information like what was his first gift amount and his most recent gift amount. So using this data to craft that ask that I'm going to reach out for today. So having really that consolidated view for both your LiveBunts and SciBunts to make sure that when you're reaching out, you know what kind of suggestion to make. Another great report that I think would be potentially helpful is this major giving performance. So this one obviously is focusing more on your major givers, but I think what's great about this is up top, you can see that I have that ability to add in some different quick filters. What I like about this one is that it's really allowing you to determine for your organization, what is a major gift. So I don't have to rebuild this report from scratch. Maybe for my organization, it's $10,000. I just come in here, add in that quick filter, and now I'm getting some updates on the average gift size, the median gift size, and being able to drill down into all of that data further. You can also look at it on a campaign basis as well. So maybe if you're specifically fundraising for a specific campaign, looking at what are other typical major donors donating to this specific campaign and using that in your outreach and your major gift ask. Okay. All right. I know we've gone through a lot of information. So Kayla, I want to open it up for any Q&A. Yeah, we'll jump to that. And then if anything else comes up, we can always jump back into the platform.
Yeah. I mean, you did such a great job. I was like, this is amazing. This is really like, as we think about how do we have the system help us, right? Actually connect at scale. Like these are the types of things when we think about, we might not even be doing this today, right? Like these are things that could have been, and I know for us at the university I worked at, or like, we would have loved to have had the time in this, or we paid other people to be able to do these things for us because we didn't have the bandwidth or the technology to be able to do that. And so I would agree. There are quite a few comments about how great of you explained that. So well done. Well done. Julia, great question. It really depends on your the size of your database. So that's a question for your CSM particular about how much does Virtuous BI cost, just about how much data and space are we holding for that. Reach out to your customer success manager, and they'll be able to help answer that question for you there. I just don't know specifically what your database size is off the top of my head. So that's a great question for them. But any questions particularly on maybe how to make this work in your instance, or what it looks like kind of at the get-go of how do we take the information that's living in the database, right? We have all this good data. It's great. I love that. But it just sits here, right? If it just sits there in like a filing cabinet, like, is that really helpful? Is that what we want to be able to do? Not really, right? So how do we take this and really make that data actionable? And agreed, Cath, I think you did such a great job of explaining like one way of being able to get there. And I think as Cath mentioned, right, the way that she kind of walked through, those were 3 different ways, but each of you all have different opportunities of how you look at your major donors. And that's really also the beauty of flexibility, is being able to say, well, what I consider a major donor might be different than what Cath considers a major donor, different than how I want to talk to my annual fund donors and she wants to talk to her annual fund donors. So being able to have the flexibility in that sense as well. I don't see any questions. So I think it's okay if we end a little bit early today. there are still 2 more days of Responsive Nonprofit Summit and so many more good sessions to come. When we look at a couple, oh, wow, we got some more questions. We'll answer those in a second. A couple of things when we look at just the next few days, we'll be here on the product stage again. So the first session every day is going to be like a product overview. And then the next 2 sessions are going to be kind of getting into the weeds of how to use Virtuous to just kind of do your job, make it a little bit easier. And so that will be coming up. So look at those on the product stage. But again, all the stages have incredible presentations going on. So really take advantage of that as well. A couple of questions on how do we avoid contacts being in multiple workflows and thus bombarded. Great question, Julia. That's really where being able to tag people, right? They're already in this, making sure they're not in something else. So I think it's more of a strategic conversation of what is our highest and best, workflow, right? If I have external workflows, what is the number 1 workflow? What would be considered a number 2 workflow, 3, 4, 5, et cetera, and making sure that you have those excludes in your queries. So when you run your first workflow, that number 1 workflow, the best thing to do is be able to add a tag that says, this person's in this workflow. That allows me to use that tag as an exclude for other opportunities there as well. And then if we connect with the donor on our dashboard, do we trash that from the list? Good question, Brian. Which dashboard are we talking about? There are a couple of different ways there. I don't know, Cath, maybe let's assume
I'm assuming he means relationship building recommendations.
Yeah. Do you want to answer what happens?
Yeah. So there's a few different options. I know I'm not sharing my screen anymore, but I'm looking at my options. So I could add a note directly from that section. So you might want to add a note directly from there. So just saying, okay, engage with Ryan Mandy. They were happy. They made a donation, etc. And then, yes, you can trash that so that it's removing that recommendation so that if other teammates are also working through this list, they know that it's been completed. So you can kind of do a combination. Yeah. Yeah.
So you don't, the contact record, when you choose to either do a contact or a task, it actually removes them automatically from that list.
Yeah.
The trash is just if you don't want to connect them today. So like I would maybe trash someone who I was like suggested to do a reach out for a financial ask, but I know that maybe they just had like a death in the family or something, right? I don't want to reach out to them anytime soon. I'm just going to trash them and say, I know that's not a good option for me, but maybe I want to set a task for me to contact them in 3 months to see how everything's going. Or I want to just add a note to say I called them and just let them know like, hey, I'm thinking about you, right? You can do either of those, all 3 of those options, remove them from that list. Good questions. Good questions. Perfect. Okay. Well, please come back and join us tomorrow at the product stage. Cath will be leading our product demo. So if you want to hear her again tomorrow morning, come and join us. But we're so grateful to have you all. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of the summit. But yeah, that's it. Have a great day, y'all.
All right. Thank you.